Hello everybody, how are you? Hello everybody, how are you? It is time to start our day. It is time to work and play. Hello everybody, how are you? Hi guys, welcome back for Friday. We're to the end of the week and today is Friday, November 13th. Yesterday we read a story from the Bible called The Good Samaritan, and we learned what it meant to be a helper and who our neighbors are, which is pretty much everybody, right? Well, today we're going to read another kind of story about being a helper, kind of. This is an old story called Stone Soup. Now, this is one of those stories that has been retold so many times and in so many different ways. Look at all the copies I have. Help me count how many copies of Stone Soup I have. They're all the same stories, but you'll see by the pictures on the front, they all might be a little bit different than each other. Here, let's count it. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and this one is 5. Just myself, I have 5 copies, different versions of the story. Well, I took a peek at them and I decided that today, this is the one I want to share with you. So this is the version of Stone Soup we're going to read. You might have this book at home, maybe one of the other ones I showed you, maybe a different one. If you do have a different one, read that one later and compare to see how they're the same and how they're different. Okay, let's start. By the way, this is the front of the book, right? So this is where I look, and I look at the picture so I get some clues of what's going on. The words at the top are the title of the book, and then over here is the back of the book. A lot of times that gives me kind of a description in words of what was going on inside. And we always start at the front of the book, and we open it up, and we look at the pages from left to right. We go from one side to the other. Okay. 3 soldiers trudged down a road in a strange country. They were on their way home from the war. Besides being tired, they were hungry. In fact, they had had nothing to eat for 2 days. "How I would like a good dinner tonight," said the first. "And a bed to sleep in," said the second. "But all that is impossible," said the third. "We must march on." On they marched. Suddenly ahead of them, they saw the lights of a village. "Maybe we'll find a bite to eat there," said the first. "And a loft to sleep in," said the second. "No harm in asking," said the third. Now the peasants of that place feared strangers. That means the people that lived there were scared of new people. When they heard that 3 soldiers were coming down the road, they talked among themselves. Okay, let's predict. Do you think the people in the town, the peasants, are going to be kind and neighborly to the 3 soldiers and help them? Or do you think they are not going to? From what I read here, I think they're not going to be. It said that they were worried and scared about new people coming to their town, and so they all got together to make a plan. Let's see what happened. "Here come 3 soldiers. Soldiers are always hungry, but we have little enough for ourselves." And they hurried to hide their food. Well, that's not being helpful. They hid the food from the soldiers. They pushed sacks of barley under the hay in the lofts. They lowered buckets of milk down the wells. They spread old quilts over the carrot bins. They hid their cabbage and potatoes under the beds. They hung their meat in the cellars. They hid all that they had to eat. And then they waited. Wow, I think that's the opposite of being a helper. The soldiers stopped first at the house of Paul and Francois. "Good evening to you," they said. "Could you spare a bit of food for 3 hungry soldiers?" "We have no food for ourselves for 3 days," said Paul. Francois made a sad face. "It has been a poor harvest." The 3 soldiers went on to the house of Albert and Louise. "Could you spare a bit of food and have you some corner where we could sleep for the night?" "Oh no," said Albert. "We gave all we could spare to soldiers who came before you." "Our beds are full," said Louise. So now they're not only not being helpers, but they're lying to the soldiers too. Wow. At Vincent's and Marie's, the answer was the same. It had been a poor harvest, and all the grain must be kept for seed. So it went all through the village. Not a peasant had any food to give away. They all had good reasons. One family had used the grain for feed. Another had an old sick father to care for. All had too many mouths to fill. The villagers stood in the street and sighed. They looked as hungry as they could. The 3 soldiers talked together. Now, do you think they're really that hungry? I think they're acting. I think they're pretending because they don't want to share. Then the first soldier called out, "Good people!" The peasants drew near. "We are 3 hungry soldiers in a strange land. We have asked you for food, and you have no food. Well then, we'll have to make stone soup." The peasants stared. Stone soup? That would be something to know about. Would you ever make food out of stones? First, we'll need a large iron pot, the soldier said. The peasants brought their largest pot that they could find. How else to cook enough? That's none too large, said the soldiers, but it will do. And now we need water to fill it and fire to heat it. It took many buckets of water to fill the pot. A fire was built on the village square, and the pot was set to boil. And now, if you please, 3 round, smooth stones. Those were easy enough to find. The peasants' eyes grew round, and they watched the soldiers drop the stones into the pot. They really are cooking with rocks. Any soup needs salt and pepper, said the soldiers as they began to stir. Children ran to fetch salt and pepper. Stones like this generally make good soup, but if there were carrots, it would be so much better. Why, I think I have a carrot or two, said Francois, and off she ran. She came back with her apron full of carrots from the bin beneath the red quilt. She brought what she was hiding. Before, remember, she told the soldiers she didn't have anything, but look, she had all those carrots. A good stone soup should have cabbage, said the soldiers as they sliced the carrots into the pot. But no use asking for what you don't have. I think I could find some cabbage somewhere, said Marie, and she hurried home. Back she came with 3 cabbages from the cupboard under her bed. If we only had a bit of beef and a few potatoes, this soup would be good enough for a rich man's table. The peasants thought that over. They remembered their potatoes and the sides of beef hanging in the cellars. They ran to fetch them. A rich man's soup, and all from a few stones. It seemed like magic. Ah, sighed the soldiers as they stirred in the beef and potatoes. If we only had a little barley and a cup of milk, this soup would be fit for a king himself. Indeed, he asked for just such a soup when last he dined with us. The peasants looked at each other. The soldiers had entertained the king well, but no use asking for what you don't have, the soldiers sighed. The peasants brought their barley from the lofts. They brought their milk from the wells. The soldiers stirred the barley and milk into the steaming broth while the peasants waited. At last the soup was ready. All of you shall taste, the soldiers said, but first a table must be set. Great tables were placed in the square, and all around were lighted torches. Such a soup! How good it smelled, truly fit for a king. But then the peasants asked themselves, would not such a soup require bread and a roast and cider? Soon a banquet was spread, and everyone sat down to eat. Never had there been such a feast. Never had the peasants tasted such soup, and fancy made from stones. They ate and they drank and they ate and they drank, and after that they danced. They danced and sang far into the night. At last they were tired. Then the 3 soldiers asked, is there not a loft where we could sleep? Let 3 such wise and splendid gentlemen sleep in a loft indeed. They must have the best beds in the village. So the first soldier slept in the priest's house, the second soldier slept in the baker's house, and the third soldier slept in the mayor's house. In the morning, the whole village gathered in the square to give them a send-off. Many thanks for what you have taught us, the peasants said to the soldiers. We shall never go hungry now that we know how to make soup from stones. Oh, it's all in the knowing how, said the soldiers, and off they went down the road. So, again, yesterday we read the story about the Good Samaritan. The Jewish man had been walking, and robbers came along, and they stole his things, and they hurt him, and they left him lying on the side of the road. Then first the priest came along, and he didn't help. Then the temple worker came along, and he didn't help. But then finally, the third man came along, and he helped. So now in this story, we have 3 men that are tired and hungry, and coming from helping other people by helping in the war, and all they need is a little food and a place to sleep. But nobody would help them. The people in the town were kind of like the priest and the temple worker. They said, I'm not helping. In fact, not only am I not helping, I'm going to hide everything I have, and I'm not going to share it. But in this story, the three soldiers, they started thinking and they came up with a plan, didn't they? They came up with a plan because they knew these townspeople had stuff that they could use and they could all have it together. So they made their stone soup. What did they need? The first thing they needed was a pot. Then they had other ingredients. Now, I don't have all the same ingredients for my soup today, but I have my grocery list here and I have my recipe here. This says grocery list. So these are the things that I would write down so I could take them to the store and buy them. And then my recipe would tell me what to do. So first of all, I am going to put in my soup, I'm going to put 2 stones because I have 2 stones that I can put in mine. Do you remember how many they put in theirs? They put 3, but I only have 2. I also have 1 onion. So I'm going to add 1 onion. I have 1 mushroom. And I have 1 pea pod. So I'm going to add that to there too. 1 pea pod. So those are my list of ingredients that I'm going to put into my soup. Now, once I put them in there, what do I need to do? This says steps. That tells me what I'm going to do. I am going to mix and I am going to stir my soup ingredients together. Your grown-up can print off a grocery list and a recipe list for you as well, and you can make your own soup list today. But will you help me make mine first? Let's see, I have my pot, and let's see, the first thing on mine said that I need to put in 2 stones. Okay, you ready to help me count? I'm going to put in my 2 stones. Here goes 1, 2. Then I need 1 onion, 1 mushroom, and 1 pea pod. You ready? I have 1 onion. I had 1 mushroom, and I have 1 pea pod. I'm going to use my pea pod to stir. I'm going to stir all my ingredients, and then I'm going to cook them. And when they're all cooked, I'm going to enjoy a nice, fancy stone soup, just like from our story. Okay, you guys, like I said, you can print off a recipe paper and a grocery list. And you can help your grown-up. You can make up a recipe and you can make up a grocery list, and then you can go shopping for the same kind of food I did. That's not real food, is it? You can use your play food, or maybe you can help your grown-up by making up a recipe and making up a grocery list and helping them out the next time they go shopping. I hope, again, that you guys are great helpers. I'll bet you anything that you guys were a whole hand of helpers yesterday. Remember, I asked you to do 5 helpful things. Do you think, since today is Friday and you have a whole weekend, you can go off and be a 2 whole hand helper? Do you think you can find 10 things to be helpful with this weekend? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I know you can. Go be a helper. Have a great weekend, and I will see you guys for all things Thanksgiving next week. Bye, everybody.